You guys are not ready for absolute Killer Croc. Holy cow, this whole comic is nightmare fuel. Okay, so what Absolute Batman does is this picks up with Batman having just been completely manhandled by Absolute Bane. And at this point, he's now a prisoner and a test subject. So what we're told, begin doctor's log, reporting on test subject 27. Sedated male presented at 6 foot 9 inches, 421 pounds. 6 staff were required to carry him in. 1 back injury incurred. Removal of its costume triggered a series of homemade booby traps. Numerous injuries incurred. Once fully stripped, scans showed further contraband hidden throughout his body. After multiple surgeries, staff is now confident all objects have been extracted. Items confiscated include tear gas pellets, acid pellets, explosive pellets, sedative pellets, hallucinogenic pellets, a full lockpit kit, blow darts, finger blades, knuckle blades, toe blades, push daggers, trench daggers, various throwing shuriken, and 1 large spiked war club. Jesus! Subject remains under heavy sedation. All data suggests he'll remain incapacitated for at least 48 hours. End doctor's log. And it turns out, of course, he's not, because while this is a far more primitive version of the Batman that we're used to, it is Batman nonetheless. And so what ends up happening, of course, is that Bruce Wayne basically picks out a pin that he had up in his gums, hidden away, ever the pragmatist. And this, of course, allows him to momentarily escape this facility. And so the guy just goes running through this entire place, trying to get out as fast as he possibly can. But through this process, he passes by the Kelfern experiment. Now, some of you guys may not know who Carl Kelfern is. This guy is beyond screwed up. And I'm almost kind of horrified to see what he ends up looking like in the Absolute Universe. But Carl Kelfern was just this twisted, mutilated looking being with like a kind of screwed up bone structure and so on and so forth. He's one of the more extreme versions of like mutated individuals, quote unquote, within the Batman mythos. He's got super strength and a variety of different abilities, but he can heal from virtually any bone-breaking injury, but it usually looks grotesque whenever he does. The bigger point is that a lot of the twisted and mutilated versions of the Batman villains that we're used to are here. For example, the Doctor chimes in again. Begin doctor's log. Subject has escaped his environment and is currently at large. Initial visuals placed him in the Southwest complex. Current sweeps have him somewhere in transmutation and plasticity, possibly en route to the clay biome. Now, this is where it gets insane, because as he's walking, a voice comes from below him and says, it hurts so bad. And literally, this is crazy, because basically it's Clayface, right? But the idea is that Clayface, as we know him, is not one contained individual who can shapeshift and do a variety of things. Clayface looks like a variety of people who have all kind of been merged together in this gigantic amorphous blob, right? It's bonkers. Now, it could also be that because it's one voice speaking, that Clayface is one guy, but cannot control his powers. But in the midst of Batman being here and all these hands reaching for him, Bane shows back up again, right? And we don't get a great big huge drawn out thing. Instead, it just says, Subject 27 apprehended by the Prime will need infirmary stay before being returned to his environment. End doctor's log. And Bane just says, keep trying, please, right? This is such a twisted version of Bane. Now, here's where things get kind of bonkers here, right? So what you do is you jump back for a second to this kind of training montage, right? Between Waylon Jones, who we usually know to be Killer Croc in DC Comics, and Bruce Wayne. Now, of course, Waylon is actually training for a fight against a guy named Bibbo Babowski. Historically speaking, Bibbo has always basically been like a Superman cheerleader. Up until this moment, it didn't quite dawn on me. I think that's who they turned into Bane. I think that Scott Snyder turned Bibbo Babowski into Bane. But the whole idea behind this montage kind of sets up for a moment later on in the story, so that's why it's kind of necessary to cover here. But it's basically just this huge instance of Bibbo being this like champion, right? And Waylon Jones being, I wouldn't say an amateur boxer, but somebody working his way up the ranks, so I guess maybe amateur. But it's a bit of a crisis of confidence that he's having, where he's not 100% sure whether he can actually do it. But then, of course, he starts to build that confidence up, and it's like 100% I can. But the reason why this matters is because it goes towards how deep the friendship is between Bruce Wayne and Waylon Jones. Now, the other part of this is that Bruce Wayne's mom is out hunting for him, right? That kind of thing. So that's really all we have to cover when it comes to that. Anyway, switching back to everything going on, which is all you guys care about, right? The doctor's voice comes on again. And this is when it gets nuts. It's when it gets absolutely amazing. So this doctor says, begin doctor's log. Report on subject 27 at the 45-day point. For a short period after recovering from his encounter with the Prime, he remained combative, staying active, clearing guano from the floor, and generally maintaining his environment. Guano, of course, being bat poop, basically. And it says, however, by 20 days in, like subjects 4, 6, 10, 11, and 21 before him, he seemed to accept his situation, becoming docile, then despondent. By 30 days in, he refused to eat, so a feeding tube was inserted into his stomach. Since then, he's barely moved, even when staff have gone in to clean the port. It's the staff's diagnosis, therefore, that subject 27 has finally fallen into total submission. End doctor's log. And as the staff come in, he kicks him in the face and immediately starts attacking all of them, right? And then it's like, update, staff diagnosis may have been premature. It now seems likely that subject 27's docility was performative, in act so he could prepare for another aggression. Now, this is where it gets, this is so cool, right? It's the most Batman thing ever. Data suggests he extracted a number of his own teeth, a mix of incisors and premolars, to use for manual combat. Literally, he turned his teeth into kind of makeshift knives on his knuckles, right? And it says the subject also managed to adjust his feeding tube to gain access to his own raw stomach acid and start spraying the doctors down with his own stomach acid. It's like this twisted version of Joker's acidic flour. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy, right? Perhaps most impressive was what he did with his latrine. After collecting a large amount of bat poop inside and then urinating on it for weeks, subject 27 was able to create a highly flammable compound, not unlike gunpowder, which he then used to explode the wall of his cell and escape once again. It's bonkers, man. Like, I get that this is not the main DC universe Batman, but he's acting like it, bro. And so the voice chimes in again. Those sensors picked him up, headed north through the strange corridor. He soon dropped more explosives to obscure his tracks, and he fell off all scans. He is currently at large again. Now, nightmare fuel, guys, because as he's making his way through here, he ends up coming across what's basically a wall of trees. And when he sits down to rest for a moment, he actually looks back at one of them. It's got eyes and a mouth. Now, this is clearly Scott Snyder referencing his own Witches comic. And good for him, because that comic was on a whole nother level of nightmare fuel, right? Pledged is pledged. But the other thing going on here is the voice chimes in and it says, updates, new reports imply that he might have gone north toward the Isley ecosystem. And so like this almost zombified looking person comes out of nowhere and says, out. The Green wants out. Let us out. It looks like this just twisted, mutated version of Poison Ivy. Not only that, one of the cool things here is the green, right? The very essence of plant life, all interconnected as a sentient organism that can be manipulated, controlled, whatever verb you want to use, with regards to guys like Swamp Thing and Poison Ivy. But still, it's horrific because, like, Poison Ivy, I guess, in this instance, goes to attack Batman. And again, this voice comes out of nowhere. Hey there, and it's Bane, right? So close. Please don't give up, please. And just starts pummeling Batman on the spot. And it happens every time. Every single time he makes an escape, he gets just far enough away that Bane shows up, pummels this guy, sends him to the infirmary, and they bring him back. But it's all part of a larger plan, because at that point, you switch back to Bruce Wayne, who appears to be getting the same implants that Bane is getting, right? Begin doctor's log. Day 91, subject 27 continues to show remarkable resilience. After 2 weeks of surgeries, he has managed to survive the full cycle, unlike all 26 subjects before him. While there were multiple instances when staff believed he would expire, especially during his craniotomy and subsequent brainstem insertion, 27 continually recovered. As of this recording, sutures and grafts are all holding, his vitals are stable. 27's body is ready. All that remains is for him to finally surrender in spirit. The excitement among the staff is palpable. The belief is that he has been broken. The Prime is more judicious, as am I. He suggests we test 27 one more time. So they present him with a Batman suit. And this is, again, kind of Scott Snyder hearkening back to his New 52 run. If you guys remember, when Batman was thrown into the labyrinth of the Court of Owls, he literally started going insane. And it's very similar to this, right? He was hallucinating, seeing things that weren't there, losing his mind. And he starts talking to the Batman suit, right? And he's like, just leave me alone, right? It's over. It's all over. There is no winning in any of this. But then he starts to overcome this fear. And when that happens, he puts on the Batman suit and starts running through the joint with his battle axe, right? And that's where he comes up on the Langstrom experiment. Kirk Langstrom, of course, being Man-Bat, a physical man and bat hybrid. Now, you have scientists who are watching this whole thing, and you have these twisted individuals. One of them almost kind of looks like a Professor Pig type guy, but he just says, help us, right? And Bruce is like, I don't know how. And it's like, then make it stop. But that's when Bane shows back up again. And this time, he starts pummeling Batman worse than before. And it's Bane back in his true form, when the guy's all juiced up and gigantic. And he just tells him, right, we're more alike than you know, friend. I'm trying to save you the pain that I went through. And he says, but it's going to take more pain now, but you will thank me in the end. I promise you. And so he says, forgive my crude translation, but there's a saying that I find useful. It's not the strongest or most intelligent of us that survive this war called life. But before he can finish, one of the things that had happened is that in the fight between the two of them, Batman had been sent flying through the glass of an enclosure. And that is where you have this just giant crocodile creature, absolute Killer Croc, who comes flying out and attacks Bane, right? Not enough to kill him, but enough to just send him flying with one swoop of his tail. And this thing is out for blood because the doctors are like, okay, we have to get out of here, right? We have to get out of here as fast as we possibly can. But then you end up seeing Killer Croc opening its mouth, and this thing is huge. Killer Croc's gigantic and literally just like eats these guys, right? Kills these doctors on the spot. And that's where Batman's just like, Waylon? And immediately he turns around. So they've converted Waylon. They've converted Waylon Jones into Killer Croc, which again, I told you guys something bad was going to happen to him. This is this dark and twisted universe. He was a really, really cool guy. Things weren't going to work out well, but I never expected this, right? Because at that point, Bruce is like, it's me. Like, Waylon, it's me. It's Bruce Wayne. And that, again, is when you hearken back to that whole training session where Waylon asks, like, Bruce, do you really think I can win? Do you really think that I can overcome Bibbo Babowski? And the response of Bruce was, of course I believe you can win. You're Waylon Croc Jones. You will always come out on top. And that bit of a connection is what brought the two of them back together, right? That is what, in this instance, allows absolute Killer Croc to recognize that it's Bruce. And then Bruce gets on his back and starts riding him through Arkham Asylum. Now, here's a crazy thing, right? We're not done, because Bane literally stands up and is like, as I was saying, it's not the strongest or the most intelligent of us who survive this war called life, but the most adaptive to change. That's Xenophon, Corinth, Athens, circa 400 BC. Time for you to change, little man. And that's where Bruce is like, shove it up your ass, right? That's Batman circa now. And Waylon Jones like screeches like, yeah, bro. And they just like take off into the sewers, right? And vanish. But again, all of this is by design, because the doctor shows up, Dr. Arkham, and literally she says, Subject 27 continues to exceed expectations, just as the Prime and I predicted. He and Mutation 523 are fleeing to the sewers. end Doctor's log. And so she just asks, right, are you excited for the final phase? Bane, of course, says, I'm very excited. Right? He says, because now I truly get to break him, which is the one thing that he wants the most. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. When I initially saw Dr. Arkham, there was a part of me that was like, is that really Bruce's mom? Like, I kind of wanted to believe it was Bruce's mom for a second, that she was just experimenting on him, which of course we know that's not necessarily the case, but it is dope, and it is exciting to see. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.